All right. We are live with a very, very special Saturday morning episode. It is Women's History Month,
Mhm.
and it has just passed, or today's the last day of Women in Construction Week. So, this month for Saturday mornings, I wanted to take the time to highlight women in the trades and women who, are making waves and moves. And I wanted to kick off with none other than Carole Del Vecchio. Hopefully, I did not butcher your last name.
Not too bad, not too bad.
Not too bad. How are you doing today, Carole?
I'm great. I'm here getting to talk about the stuff that I'm most passionate about in my life, and I have my cup of coffee and my
That's
fuzzy
right.
jacket and great company, and it's all good.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, Carole, for the folks who don't know you, and I will explain why I brought Carole on, and this has been long awaited. But Carole is a force to be reckoned with in the world of education and works with young children as young as like 7, I think, 9. And I will let her tell a little bit more about what she does because she's had a long journey in the construction industry. And I definitely don't want to skip over any of that. But as we try to promote the trades, which is what this show is completely entirely about, is
Mhm.
promoting careers in the trades, promoting the trades as an alternative to university. I couldn't think of a better person to bring on than somebody who is literally putting torches in the hands of elementary school kids.
Mhm.
So, Carole, why don't you tell the people who you are, and we'll dive a little bit into your story.
Sure. I just want to emphasize exposure. I'm very fortunate. I did grow up in an affluent family. I had a very progressive-minded mom who used to say, if you don't know, you don't know. So
Mhm.
we had literature abounding throughout the house. The news was on 24/7. I got to do a lot of traveling out of the country as a young person because she wanted my world to be large. And
Mhm.
based on that view, she felt that I could potentially make better decisions for my life. But anyway, that's another story. She was very, I mean, I am not anti education in any way, shape, or form. I started at an Ivy League college and I
Mhm.
was a language major and I love learning. However, I am holistic, and that means that I see my brain as an organ that needs to be developed to its full potential. I'm not going to get really here on my podium about education, but if we do not let children, well, I can't even call it play because a 6 or a 7-year-old in my shop is not, building a skyscraper. This
Right.
child is being made comfortable and aware, understands safety in the shop. As the brain develops, and you guys can research this in terms of educational theory and philosophy, as the brain develops, not doing hand to eye to that thinking component, it's really a disservice to kids, in my opinion. And just to
Mhm.
like sum this up real quick, I was in family businesses and I was working at that age. I mean, literally not doing major things, but I was working with my father and my grandfather, and I used tools. And when I was about 8, my grandfather, my nonno, an Italian, let me go down into his shop and use a hand grinder, like a pedestal grinder, but it was manual. And
Yep.
I got to put an edge on butter knives, and the sparks were flying all over. And I just thought that was like the most awesome thing in the world. So my mission here, like to balance things out,
It is,
it,
even to this
oh my
day,
gosh, just
it's pretty
torches,
awesome.
fire, welding, it's all good stuff. It's really good. Talk about engagement. It's not hard
Mhm.
to engage a child in that environment. But the reality of this is in our society, everything flips flops historically. It's nothing new. If we
Mhm.
do not offer children, both boys and girls, an opportunity to see this at a young age and acclimate themselves to it at a young age, then we have not given them an exposure so that they can make the best choices for their life. But I will not say that I do not think education is important. It is. And I have combined my education with my hands on, and I think it's like the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. Actually, we've had some incredible folks on this show and folks that are in our network and,
Sure.
probably catching replays. So if you're on team replay, make sure you hashtag replay in the comments. If you're live, send us some hearts and some likes. We know it's early in the morning, but we're so grateful that you're here. And, it's all about the exposure. It's all
Yeah.
about, um, at a very, 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 very young age, having seen something as we were
Yeah.
talking a little bit about it in the pre-show.
Mm.
So, currently, you are an educator.
Yes.
However, you've had between your family business and where you are now, you've had your own journey in the construction industry, and you've been in the construction industry for a couple decades now, I think,
Mhm. Yes.
right? Just a
Yeah.
few.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot to this story that got you to where you are right now. So why don't you tell us, outside of your family business and after high school, I guess, which is when folks are typically going to university, which I did too. I went to a Ivy League school of the South. Shout out to my Baylor Bears out there, and ended up in the construction industry at much later. But how did you end up in construction?
Very interesting question. A lot of it was a subconscious pathway, I think.
Okay.
Um, because I grew up in a very traditional Italian family,
Okay.
my loving father wanted me to wear dresses, stay in the office, answer the phone, and be nice to the customers.
I
So
understand that. I completely understand that.
I tried, Dad. I really tried. So because it was automotive, it was the first full service car wash in Springfield, Mass. So we had the car wash, we had custom detailing, we
Mhm,
had a parking lot, we sold used cars, we had a truck stop, gas station, and a repair shop. So
mhm.
the moment he was gone, my brother and I worked together. I was out of the office into the repair shop. And I was
Okay.
hanging with the mechanics and watching them fix cars and weld, right? So I'm
Mhm.
like, this is a lot more fun than sitting in the office. So I think I'm liking this. Okay. So I think that was the beginning. Hanging out with my grandfather, straightening
Mhm.
out nails for him, like I told you, that was my job, or holding the shovel while my dad swept the dirt and then I could dump it into the wheelbarrow. I loved it. Okay. So the seeds were planted that I did not want to be terribly domestic.
Right.
So from there, I went and did what I was supposed to do. I became an interpreter translator for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the trial courts, and I did that for 15 years. And I did a great job because I helped a lot of people. I love helping people, but
Mhm.
it wasn't it. It was not fulfilling. When I was 18, I illegally took a ride in a tractor trailer with my girlfriend, and I said, I like this too. So one day I'm going to drive tractor trailer. I don't know how I'm going to do. Oh, there's one more. When I was 10, my brother and I were walking down Hartford Avenue in Old Lyme, Connecticut, because that's where my parents had beach property. And back in the day, there was a place called the Pavilion. I think it's still there, and all the bikers hung out there. So I'm walking down the street with my brother, and this pack of bikers comes flying by, and there's a chick, dead center, on a big Harley with ape hangers. And I said, "Ooh, I want to do that too." Okay, so you see the path? Okay, so,
I see the
um,
path. I see the path.
and my mother's going, Lord Jesus, help me. Okay, so,
I'm
after
sure. I'm sure.
15 years doing what I was supposed to do, I said, this is it. I'm just gonna go for it. And I decided I was gonna get my Class A CDL and drive tractor trailer, and I did that.
Amazing.
And I leased to a guy who leased to a guy, which meant I was making zero money. So I said, I have to have my own business because I grew up in businesses just like you. So that
Mhm,
entrepreneurial spirit was always there. So I
mhm.
gathered my credit cards together and I went to Peterbilt of Rhode Island and I bought myself a tractor and I leased on as an owner operator. I
Okay.
ran that business for 11 years. I bought a property because of that allowed me to actually pull my tractor and trailer into the property. The back building has three-phase power, So I started learning how to do diesel mechanics. We worked on our vehicles all by ourselves. So I was good at bikes. I got a motorcycle mechanic certification from Harley Davidson in between all this. So I was doing motorcycles, buying vintage cars for restoration, working on trucks. Then,
Yeah, and some of these vintage cars and trucks are on Carol's feed. So if y'all are not following Carol on LinkedIn, or any of the social platforms, make sure that you give her a follow and go to past posts because they are. So she just like breezed through a bunch of stuff like as if it's like normal. So she's got all these
it's not
licenses.
normal? Are you telling me this is not normal? So I'm going to wrap it up real quick. When 2007 got crazy economically and fuel was almost $5 a gallon, I had to get out and I went to learn to really go to school to learn to weld. And that's when I
Okay.
started my welding business, which brought me more into the world of construction. But
Gotcha.
my father and grandfathers were builders. So
Hmm.
I was around building of homes and renovation, everything from a very young age.
Right.
There's more, but I can stop here so you guys can like say, okay, let's move on to something else now.
No, this is exactly why we're here, right?
Okay.
And shout out to Jesse over
Hi,
here in the
Julie. Rock
comments.
on, Julie.
you know, we loved Jesse and Carol did do a show on the Learning and Missteps podcast as well with Jesse. So if you didn't catch that, I'll make sure that we tap that link
Yes,
for
Jesse and Jen are my heroes. Just want to shout
abs
that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. The Jen and Jess No BS show. That's actually, I think, how we met. If
Yeah,
folks are wondering
yeah,
how, this divine connection even happened,
yep,
shout out to Jesse and Jen for, making this happen. So,
yeah.
let's actually keep going with your story because
Okay.
it's the reason that we're here. And, your story is going to inspire somebody and hopefully, a bunch of somebodies to just pick up and do something, right? Even if it's like part time or as a
Yeah,
hobby, because I'm sure that a lot of the things that you're talking about here, from your Harley Davidson certification to, some of the other ventures that you went into, started as hobbies or as
yeah,
something for fun.
yeah.
And then you being the entrepreneur that you are, and also just the creative, we talked about
Yeah,
creativity,
creativity. Yeah,
that you turn it into something bigger than just this little hobby. And I
right,
know that there are people who are watching who have these little hobbies
right.
that, maybe are something greater, and we need people in the construction industry.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So you go from mechanic to construction through a welding certification. Um, let's keep going from there.
Okay, so I established Metalwork by Carol, and
Mhm,
I was teaching at that time. I became a teacher at a local community college, and
mhm,
I loved it. But I've always been a teacher. I mean, it's my nature to be a teacher, and my mother instilled that in me to share knowledge. It's again that exposure thing.
mhm,
Um, so I was trying to like spin 12 plates at once, which I'm trying not to do now that I'm almost officially retired, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I found that I couldn't really do a good job at all of it, obviously. So I
mhm,
focused more on teaching, and I would take side jobs
mhm,
periodically. And I'd take anything, small job shop. I like that. I like not knowing what's going to come in the door the next day because it would always force me to do more, learn more. And I love that
mhm,
kind of challenge. So that kind of became a part-time endeavor while I was teaching, and decided that to make enough money to continue living in the home that I bought because of my trucking company, which I no
right.
longer had, I had to pursue education. So I did. I went back and started school all over, associates, then bachelor of science. This is all in technology. So remember, I said I love geeks because I'm really a tech ed teacher. Um, Bachelor of science, master's, and I did start my doctorate, but it's a lot of money and a lot of time, and I don't know if I'm going to do that. But I think that balance. There's a book by Matthew B. Crawford. I really wish more people in education and business as well would read it. It's called Shop Class as Soul Craft, And it is an amazing story which runs parallel to mine. He started repairing vintage motorcycles, went and got a PhD, worked in a think tank, found out that he had to go back to his roots working on motorcycles. But he speaks of the journey really eloquently, and it's great for education because we have separated thinking and doing. And my goal is to bring thinking and doing back together. And that's what the trades do. You cannot be an unintelligent person and work in the trades and do a good job. And that
Ooh, that is
stereotype
very
is
true.
so it is like it angers me to a point that I really can't put it into words. But be that as it may, I went back and I did continue my education. I taught on a university level, and I love teaching. I do love teaching. I love it because I love when students ask me questions and I don't know the answer. That's a wonderful thing because then we jump into it together and we find
Right.
out, which is inquiry, curiosity, learning, right? If you want to
Mhm.
go somewhere in life, that's very important. So I did. I now that I'm retired, I am fluffing up Metalwork by Carole again. I
Mhm.
am doing workshops, and yes, I have not been able time wise to reach out to a lot of venues where I can grab the attention of young women. And I want to throw a shout out to Judeline for Tools and Tiaras because she is doing amazing, amazing work. I don't know how many chapters she has now, but I see young women learning all kinds. Well, she's a plumber by trade, which is
Mhm.
amazing, great. I want to run any age group, any gender. I don't care. I've taught kids from 7 to 70. But that's my goal now to bring my understanding, my education. I'm bringing in math, blueprint, precision measurement, um, anything that will feed the fire to
Mhm.
create a workforce that not just Connecticut, but we really need nationally. Anyway, I do love construction. I love building. It is creative. Welding is both an art and a science. And you
Mhm.
have to, right? And when you're building stuff, you have to conceptualize it. You have to
Yep.
see it, draw it, and then make it. And to me, there's like nothing better than that creative outlet, no matter what form it takes. My mom was like a chef. She did it with
Yeah.
food, you know?
Yep, food
But
is another one. My brother actually, he plays with food, as I call it, because we play with tools and buildings, and he makes things out of nothing, you know?
I know.
Yeah, all these ingredients put together, and so shout out to my brother for
Yeah,
also having the entrepreneurial spirit, but turning that into a catering business.
yeah,
And, he's out in the islands and, he's taking fusions from all over the United States because we moved around a lot as expats,
that's great.
bringing it, to venues all around the islands. And so, you said something that I didn't want to gloss over, and I actually wanted to touch on, a little bit more because folks, particularly millennials like myself, and maybe Gen Z and Gen X,
Yeah,
who had technology shoved down their throat
yes.
growing up, and we're told, "You must go to college, you must go to college. If you don't go to college, and if you don't go to XYZ type of college,
Hmm.
you are an absolute POS and a nobody and, like,
Right.
worthless, and,
Yeah,
if you get into trucking or entrepreneurship
yeah,
or, whatever, you that's like because you didn't make it in school, right?
yeah,
Or you weren't good enough for school
yeah, that's
or
awful.
whatever, right? And
Yeah,
I'm being, a little bit over dramatic right now, but for some people, this
it's
is their
true.
reality,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it
And
is.
for me, I tried the route of going to school, and I went to, like I said, an Ivy League type school of the South.
Yeah,
And my goal was to be an eloquent lawyer and make my parents proud,
mhm,
Caribbean parents, Hispanics, I think African Americans, most third culture folks, are very similar to your Italian parents,
yeah, yeah,
So I will say
yeah,
that, we probably grew up very similarly in that females and males had certain roles,
yeah,
while at the same time being exposed to everything,
yeah.
which is absolutely incredible. And my dad, shout out to my dad, is one of the most supportive people of my business,
Mhm,
and, very, very proud, and tells me how proud he is of me, and that means a lot because I think in
sure.
my 20s, I thought that I had to take a completely different path in order to make my parents proud. And
Right.
so there are people in their mid 30s, early 40s that maybe are lost right now
Yeah.
and need to transition careers,
Yeah.
and or feel like they're stuck in this 9 to 5 rat hole
Right.
because they feel like they're not using their brain, as you said. And
Right.
so you said that people in the construction industry are one of the smartest people,
Yeah.
you know, pretty much in the world. And Lance, when he was on, made a very similar comment about how construction people were some of the smartest people he knew,
Yeah.
and the reason is because, as you mentioned, there's like 3 to 4, 5, 6 step process
Yeah.
that goes depending on where you are in the construction line,
Right.
of visualization, of being able to understand something that's in 2D,
Right.
because we don't always have 3D renderings or drawings, right?
Right.
Sometimes the 2D is something that we draw out
Right.
from field measurements, and a visualization. And so having the capacity to even do that, right? And to work with the math and the geometry and everything else that
Yeah.
goes into it, that is part of our traditional education system. And we said education is good.
Yeah.
It really brings it all together, right? And it makes sense now to me how the first schools thought of these curriculums, to begin with.
Right.
Like, if we consider why basic math and geometry and this, why this, that, and whatever. And I think they were catering to the jobs of the times.
Yes.
you know?
It's
And
true.
over time, the jobs have changed. Even in construction, we've got
Yeah.
tools, we've got machines, we've got equipment and everything else. For the
Mhm.
parents that are watching,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And this is the question. Probably over talked it, but this is the question that I was leading up to with all of this, is for the parents that are watching, if they have children who are creative, maybe too outspoken, get in trouble in school a little bit, or aren't falling in line.
Oh, I
What
hate that word. Oh, I hate that phrase. So go ahead. Sorry.
I know. What would be your suggestion? Because I think these are typically the children that are most creative
Yeah.
and the smartest, and the reason
Yes.
that they don't fit, or they can't fall in line, is because it's not a part of their DNA.
You're right. You're
You
right.
know?
The fact that we are, and I apologize, I'm not going to offend anybody, but why are we giving creative, intelligent, energetic kids medicine to sit still when they have so much to offer in a way that just what isn't the norm? Well, firstly,
Mhm.
I don't believe in norms. I don't know if you could gather that from my ebullient personality, but I'm telling you that when I teach to the individual. It's a lot of work because I have a curriculum, I have objectives that I have to meet, but I
Mhm.
do my damnedest to deliver it to each person in a way that they can use their innate abilities to achieve.
Yes.
Now, I I love Montessori. I love constructionism is a great way to look at education. I have a lot of students at my workshops who come from homeschooler families because they allow a child to self-express. I mean, even as
Nice.
an adult, let's face it, we can be at our desks producing 1,000%. And if someone walks in with a cake, what happens, everybody? We turn into 5-year-olds and we run to the party so we can have a piece
A
of
piece of
cake.
cake.
Okay, so my point is,
I had to do the little 5-year-old dance with it because it's like,
we
of
can't,
course.
don't negate the child in you. You can still be a very successful academic, business person, whatever, but keep the joy of being a human being in it.
Yeah.
And when we try to constrict that energy that creative children have, we're doing them and us a disservice. So
Mhm.
I'm saying to parents, My mom tried so hard with me. I mean, I was the what's your Glamour magazine? Or I did all that. I did all that. I dressed to the nines. I was the workout queen. I had my gel nails and um my very expensive, luxurious clothing, and I was a very unhappy person. I mean, I was
Mhm.
doing okay, but the me inside of me was just like screaming, like, isn't there like a little more to this? So don't do that to your child. Trust the process.
Mhm.
Trust your child to find their way through life and support them, right? We're all individuals.
Mhm.
One size fits all doesn't work, folks. And let's see, I've been teaching for what, 16, almost 17 years, and I have refused to cave to quote unquote the norm. And I have made a lot of people very happy and wanting to learn and developing careers. And Jesse and I talk a lot about agency, this this internal innate power we all have to determine our life path. And
Mhm.
if you put your child into a situation where they feel they're not
Mhm.
okay who they are or what they want, yeah, usually the end results are not very good. So let them
No.
fly. Even if they just start, I tell my welders that are young, you may start off as a welder, you may start off as a production welder, but I teach them welding theory. I teach them all these. I teach them how to write. I teach them how to
Yep.
speak. 5 years, 8 years, 10 years from now, I want them to be prepared to move either upward or laterally. You don't have
Mhm.
to stay there, but it makes a good living, and then they can even continue their education and pay for it themselves. Doesn't that make sense? I'll shout out to
Absolutely.
Mike Rowe too. I don't know Mike, but I've been watching him for years, and
I
I
love
love
Mike.
his message. I love his message.
Yeah, Mike Rowe is amazing, and I think we shout out Mike Rowe quite a bit
Good.
on this live stream, and
Yeah.
in general,
Yep.
when I get the opportunity to speak
Yep.
on stage, or as I was talking about in the pre-show, I get to speak at 2 high schools this month, and
That's great.
it's pretty exciting. Although, as we were also talking about in the pre-show, I think high school is a little bit too late
It is.
because at this point we've already had these preconceived notions of what it is that the expectation is
Yeah.
set forth for us, whether
Yeah.
it's an expectation that our,
Mhm.
well-intentioned parents,
Yeah.
put for us, or whether it was, some television show
Yeah.
or some celebrity that we looked up to,
Yeah.
or, people get their inspiration or their purpose or their direction from
Yeah.
different places. Not everybody, is as fortunate as you and I to grow up, in a
True.
home with parents and grandparents who had these incredible jobs and businesses and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
Yeah.
everybody has their experience, but um, I think that personally, high school, even middle school, some of middle school is also a little bit too late. And really, we're talking more about elementary school. And if I think about my friends now who have children in elementary school age, and or my sister and or other family members who have elementary school age kids, where would they even go to find a program like yours? Because I think that more parents, and I could think of a handful right now,
Right.
would potentially
Yes.
put their kids through a summer of, a program like yours, because they are interested in piquing their curiosity. That's why things like the YMCA and Girl Scouts exist. And, shout out to the Girl Scouts
Yeah.
and shout out to the YMCA summer camps,
Right.
for doing hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
And, so where outside of the regular education system, in the small amount of schools where it exists, where do parents go find a program like yours?
I have to say that over the years, I have been told by many parents that they cannot find things in this vein. However, as a stopgap measure, um, I love Legos. I love giving young children any kind of tools to think of building, because that
Mhm,
creates a huge ability to visualize, like you were talking about.
mhm,
So If you do an internet search, you may find like some summer camps. Mostly
Mhm.
they're STEM, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I love getting dirty. In fact, staying clean is really difficult for me, but I try because I'm an adult. Um, but I love environments where I am so into it that I don't know that like half my face is filthy, dirty black, and I'll walk out and other adults will say, you know, you've got stuff on your face, and I'm like, well, I really don't care, but if it bothers you, I will wash it off. Side comment. There are not. I get that people are afraid of liability. I'm not. I just
Right.
don't look at life that way. When I first started teaching high schoolers, it was me and 20 plus high schoolers who had never been in a shop before, and I never had one injury.
Okay.
So, can it
No.
be done? Absolutely. Do I have eyes in the back of my head? Yes. Am I realistic with what each person can and cannot do? Yeah. But I do understand in this world that we live in, a lot of people are nervous. I
Mhm.
refuse to go there because the need is greater. The need is greater, and things can be constructed in a way where they're not dangerous at all. It's just a step by step.
Right.
If you do search,
Just like any
um,
job site, right? Like,
right,
things
just like an
can be
apprenticeship, like you
yeah,
start at a
exactly.
certain level, yeah, and then move up. I think that there will be more of this because I am seeing a change. I really am. I'm starting to see it in social media, which is like does my heart like so much good that people are starting to see that sacrificing um, independence for convenience is not necessarily a good thing.
Mhm.
So I'm going to keep doing this till I can't do it anymore. And now that I have the time, in the past week, without even trying, I've already picked up 5 more people that want to come weld and learn. So
Right.
this isn't going to be hard for me. I've been doing it a long time, and I've started many businesses, so I'm not intimidated by it. I just like jumped into it. But
I
parents,
love that attitude.
yeah, people think I'm insane. I do want to tell you this though. I want to tell you why I grew up in a very wealthy town, and my parents were very wealthy. Reality,
Mhm.
we all worked very hard, and they were very wealthy. I was so miserable, trapped in that life that we described earlier,
Mhm.
that I left, and I was the black sheep of the family, and I was written out of the will. And when I was 25, my parents had a friend who was a lawyer, and he was my friend. He just said to me, Carol, are you sure you want to do this? Because right now you're looking at about $250,000. And I said, I'm gone. So I started with nothing really. I had a beat up Dodge pickup truck. It was a standard third gear, didn't work. The radiator leaked. I had to carry water with me. My savings account was a terrarium that I threw change in, and I lived on hot dogs and macaroni and cheese for a long time. So
2
are there?
slices of pizza for $5 and a
Oh yeah, that
soda is what
that
I
very
live off of
inexpensive
here.
cardboard pizza that comes frozen. That's just so good, so good. Just sprinkle cheese on top. Anyway, the point is, I'm sorry.
With you, sister. I'm
You
with
can't
you.
imagine what my friends thought of me at the time. You are nuts. You're nuts. Why don't you
Mhm.
want to come to the country club and play bridge and eat at a luncheon and play golf? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's just like, I cannot do it. So my point is, don't be afraid of the challenge. The challenge is hard, but
Yeah.
if you end up being true to yourself in the end, there's like nothing like it. So parents, let your kids build things, make things, do things. There's a company, QUIK, Quick something or other. I They make great kits, like building kits. They're
Mhm.
not that expensive. There's lots of things out there now you can let kids get hands on.
There's
And
those Magna tiles too.
yes,
I don't know.
there's a lot. There's a
Yeah,
lot.
Magna tiles are awesome.
Or move to Connecticut and bring them to my place. Come on.
Bring 'em on over. We're
Just
gonna have to
both
create
sides. See
a
both sides of
Carol's
it.
summer camp or
And
something.
yeah, actually, one of my students actually just his mom just texted me and said, "Can you do summer camps this year?" So I'm going to do that. I've done that before. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just I don't know. It's enriching. It's just enriching and fulfilling to me to see kids given an opportunity to find themselves. The confidence that comes out of these types of experiences is amazing. It's like this kid looks at you and goes, "You're really gonna let me do that? I can touch that. I can use that tool."
Mhm.
It's I don't know. I didn't have that because this is how it was for me. Go pick up that bag of lime and bring it over here and dump it in the wheelbarrow.
Yeah, and I understand that
Yeah,
because, we grew
yeah,
up sitting in the back of our
yeah,
grandfather's van, like I mentioned, in the
yeah,
summers and going
yeah,
on estimates with my grandmother where, we were the ones reading off the measurement at the end of
yeah,
the tape, and taking the notes and, also helping with inventory in the back of a store and everything else, right? Like,
yes,
and for my niece whom lives in Connecticut, and I'm very close to my sister and my niece and my family, it's the same thing. She's grown up with tools in her hand,
yeah,
even though they're baby tools or, she didn't want the plastic tools. We tried that. She was like, "This is crap. I want real tools."
yeah. Make
you
it
know,
real. Yeah, make it
it's
real.
it is. So let's talk a little bit about because you've been in the construction industry now for, I want to say, 2, 3 decades at minimum.
I've
you know,
known one thing my job has allowed me to do is I'm big on helping my students find jobs. So
hmm
I have hundreds of people in businesses that I've been communing with over the years.
hmm
I try to keep my finger on the pulse of industry so I can help them.
Yeah. So
So,
let's talk a little bit about the challenges because there are challenges. It's not perfect world out there for women in construction. I think if it was, more women would be in the construction industry
mhm,
and more parents with little girls would be exposing the little girls to
mhm,
the construction industry because
yeah,
again it's all about exposure, right?
mhm,
And so in looking for after school programs, traditionally, depending on the parent,
right,
we're looking at different types of programs depending on the gender of the child,
right,
and that's just is the way that it is, and
yeah,
also just based off of interests and exposure.
yeah,
So, how do we get more women in construction? And, without turning this into a complaining session, because I don't
right.
want it to be,
No, no, no.
let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges. And these are challenges in your experience.
Yep.
Obviously, we're not asking you to generalize or to speak for all women
Mhm.
in construction, but just challenges that you faced as a woman in construction and why you feel more females are not joining the industry and what we can do to change that.
Well, we've already talked about exposure. That's key.
Mhm.
Um, if they don't know, they don't know. If it's not a potential career path, they're not even going to consider it.
Mhm.
Um, exposure and competency, I think, help pave a very good pathway. We say in welding, when the hood drops, the bullshit stops. So if you, I don't care what gender you are, when you
Mhm.
go to do your thing, you either can do it or you can't. And as
Right.
a female, you will be challenged relentlessly.
Mhm.
But when you show the work, after a time, it stops because
Mhm.
what can be said, right? So
Mhm.
there is a learning curve, and there's a pay your dues curve for sure. But I
Mhm.
want to tell you that I'm so proud to say that some of the first women I taught are doing phenomenally well. I'm like over the moon with their achievements. One young lady is in a sheet metal union. She is now a journey person and she toughed it out. She's involved in union politics and advocating for women in
Nice.
the union. Another one of my young women who is probably not so young anymore, but she's an iron worker, and
Mhm.
she transferred to a different. I don't know if it's quality control or something along those lines, but now she's knee deep in blueprints and being part of the job. I mean, the list goes on about women who have quote unquote made it. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to say that it's so difficult. A lot
Mhm.
of women leave, some do. I have another woman who's a phenomenal pipe welder. She was an iron worker. You have to expect that you have to prove yourself. And I have so many issues with gender stereotypes, but we're not going to go there today. I see it changing. I do see it changing. It's
Yeah.
different than when I grew up. I see more women willing, like, to jump into it, and I think there's an economic component to it as well, which is fine,
Mhm.
because in World War II, women could weld and work in factories and drive trucks, and that was a great thing. And that was
Yep.
because there were no men to do it. So
Right.
you can do it when given the opportunity to do it. I understand ego issues. I understand that a lot of men do not want to go toe to toe with a female who can do what they do or do
Mhm.
it better. But you know, this is the big bad world, and for many years, women had to suppress and repress what they thought and what they could do because the tables were definitely flipped. Um, I do think that people are becoming more. I don't know. Is it realistic? I don't know. There's a norming of an understanding of just the concept of ability. If you can do it, do it. If you can't do it, don't do it.
Right.
I don't advocate for women to be in a position and not be competent at their job. That's ridiculous. But
Absolutely, and there's a lot of that as well,
yeah,
because there's
yes,
a lot of
there's a lot of
quotas that need to be hit and check
yeah,
boxes that need to be checked, and
yeah.
I don't prescribe to any of that BS myself,
Right.
as you know, and we've talked about
No,
many
yeah, it's
times.
true.
But, so we understand and we agree as just, there are challenges,
Yeah,
and I agree, we do have to prove ourselves. I
yeah,
think most apprentices need to prove themselves
yes,
regardless of gender,
yeah,
honestly. The boys get hazed the most,
right.
you know?
But
And
they're raised with that. See, there's the
mhm,
difference. But I
yep,
also see that changing.
mhm,
It is it is I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to toughen people up, right? So
mhm,
we start saying negative things like "you can't do that," "don't mess up," blah blah, starting it young. So after time, you become impervious to that sort of thing. Women are not exposed to that. Women are not raised to be risk takers. Well, some are, but a lot are not.
yeah,
So there are hurdles to overcome in terms of how women are raised, right?
as
But
well,
that
yeah,
makes a huge difference. If you are confident in yourself going into a tougher environment, it bounces off, right? For most of it
right,
bounces, I'm just going to do my job. There are many women who were trailblazers who did things way, way, way out of the norm. How did they do it? Well, they didn't look right. They didn't look left. They looked straight ahead and kept moving forward. And those are the people that end up being successful. It's
right,
not easy. It's not easy, but you can do it. You can
mhm.
get used to the environment. You can do it.
Yeah, and I think construction, the culture is changing,
Yes.
maybe
Thanks to
not.
some people who are out there all the time reminding us that it should change. Right? Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
there are. Yeah, us being part of that, right? So, the culture is changing, though, in the construction industry. You also touched on a couple other industries that are also suffering for labor, which was trucking.
Oh, yeah.
And, you also touched on obviously automotive and
Mhm,
mechanic.
mhm.
And so these are all hands-on. We also talked about cooking and
Yeah,
chefs and, having a business in a trade.
right,
So trades is anything that has to do with working with your hands,
right,
It could be a hairdresser,
right.
it could be anything.
Yeah,
So I guess the main message of this conversation is if you like working with your hands and you are a creative person, out of
right,
box thinker,
right.
somebody who just does not feel like they fit or have children that are, uniquely
Gifted,
gifted
gifted.
and different,
Yeah,
before you medicate them. And,
right.
we glossed over that, but, I am with you there as well.
Yeah,
Before you medicate them, why not try something a little bit different
yeah.
and, put some Legos or some magnet tiles or go to, a Home Depot workshop with them
Yes, that's
or
right.
any of the other different community things that, I don't know very many myself.
Right.
And I wish that there was more out there,
Yeah.
and I'm also trying to myself get into education, even though it sounds crazy to me
Mm-mm.
that I even am considering a
Mhm.
path in education to be an after school teacher
Oh, you should,
because
definitely.
we need this
Yeah.
paperwork filed. We need this
Yeah.
paperwork filed. Like I've committed to it, right? And it's because it's needed. It's because we need more exposure to hands-on learning and playtime. And I
Yeah.
love that we call it playtime
Yeah.
because that's really all after school programs are, okay? Whether you're putting your kid in a sport, in a chess club, in a debate club, in dance, or any of the other things. And I did all of those, by the way. Improv, I was the my parents also wanted I grew up very privileged, went to private school. My dad was an expat, so we had a lot of great opportunities that other people don't get to grow up with, and they always wanted us to have an after school activity. I never stuck with one. I always jumped around,
That
and
sounds familiar.
I would say that theater tech, so shout out to the theater tech team at the Woodlands High School in the Woodlands, Texas, which is north of Houston, for putting tools in my hand.
Yes.
I was part of the theater club, but I got so sick and tired of, and I'm sorry, the dumb roles and, the
Mhm.
costumes and whatever. And I already knew how to sew and make costumes. I grew up making my own costumes for dance, and my grandmother used to make us dresses and taught us how to use sewing machines. And so sewing was not something I really cared to learn, but building the set and the lighting and
Yeah.
the audio, let's
Yeah.
go. So, there was a teacher who saw that, hey, maybe she'd be better on the theater tech team. Instead of kicking her out of theater, let's put her on the tech team. And
Yeah.
so I went on the tech team and I started to build sets. And that's how I finished off that semester of school. And then, of course, joined the theater tech team the next semester because it was fun. And,
Yeah.
building the sets was way cooler. So, that was outside of family, I think my first
Mhm.
exposure to construction with the tools. I also worked a job, I was homeschooled in high school because I was kicked out in around the ninth grade, of the private school I was at. Story for another day, but, I was homeschooled, and so I got to have a job because my parents didn't want me to be cooped up at home. So I worked at the Marriott in Aruba, that's where we lived, and I worked at the facilities department, and the facilities department or engineering department is just a fancy way of saying, like,
Yeah. Maintenance.
groundskeepers.
Yeah, yeah.
Maintenance. Yeah, maintenance.
Yeah.
So that was another set of exposure that I had to the construction industry and the field and, the procurement side. And I sat in an office, but anytime that somebody needed a helper, which meant holding a flashlight somewhere dark or whatever, I would always raise my hand and say, I'll go, because I didn't want to be in the office. So I get that, I totally get that. And, I appreciate people like you who inspire people like me to fill out paperwork for a Department of Education that I really don't agree with a lot of what's going on in there. But if I can complain about it or I can be a part of
Good
the
for it.
change, you know.
There's a
So
practicality, not to chomp on you, but there's a practicality about having these skill sets, and we talked about that. I wanna tell you,
mhm,
when I moved into my little farmhouse, which needed a lot of work, I didn't have
yes.
money for furniture, so you know what I did? I grabbed some pallets off the loading dock, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know, maybe 40, 60 feet of half-inch round bar, and I made myself 3 tables and no, 4 tables, a TV table, coffee table, accent table, and I think I spent a grand total of whatever the round stock cost, which was
Right.
maybe 80 bucks. And it
Right.
came out gorgeous, and I gave it away ultimately. But I want to talk about the skills gap concept, which to me is like, it's a great name. Okay, we got to call it something. But in reality, is no teachers to teach it, right? Because if you're out in business and you're making big bucks, you're not
Hmm.
going to give up that career to become a teacher. But how about being an adjunct? How
Hmm.
about working part time to share your experience, share your strengths, share your knowledge? And the other thing, how about businesses manning up or personing up, whatever we want to call it today, and throw a little money to these programs because welding, for one, is an extremely expensive program to run. I mean, electrical service in and of itself is huge, and metal is
Hmm.
not cheap these days either.
No.
So, if we really want to fix it, right, exposure, teaching, and cash. There you go. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks so much.
And cash, and that's really, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not lying.
No.
And so, the Department of Education needs to also throw cash into this. They throw cash into a lot of different types of
Yes.
programs. So, private companies and also the public sector really needs
Yeah.
to get it together, and instead of talking about the skills gap, like you
Yep.
said, we
Yeah.
need to just do something about it.
Yeah.
And, I I'm a group fitness coach, teacher, used to teach dance to, elementary kids. I've been a teacher my whole life,
There you go.
here in my heart. And I feel as though getting in the construction industry was very spiritual for me as well. I don't
Mhm.
think that it was the path that was chosen for me by, society or family or whatever, and the path that I tried to take in
Right.
most of my 20s,
Mhm.
and I found it as a second career in my 30s by accident. And, I want to encourage more people to see it as an opportunity earlier on.
Yeah.
So, when the opportunity was presented to me to even have the opportunity to introduce an after school program or be an adjunct, after school
Yeah.
teacher, for the Department of Education, I hesitated, not gonna lie, called a mentor, that complains a lot about the Department of Education and how horrible it is and how everything is wrong. But then we also talked about why do it, why she's been in it so long, why she
Right.
stays in it,
Right.
and the need that the education system has for more people to raise their hand and say, "Okay, let's learn something together,"
You're right.
and let's explore together. And really, for me, it's about exploration. And,
Right.
you are 100% correct. More people are not going to raise their hand, or business owners, to do this. And it's not free, right? I mean, time is
No.
money.
Yeah.
And so we need to put some or allocate funds as a government and as private companies
Right.
to donate to these types of programs if we really want to get rid of said skills gap. And
Right.
I am a firm believer that people who are transitioning careers and women who just feel stuck can pick up right where they are right now. I mean, you went back to school
I
at,
did. It was
whatever age,
crazy, but it was worth it. It was so worth it.
yeah, you can pick up right where you are and just, start now. And it can start part-time,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. I met some incredible women who actually own construction businesses at the International Builder Show last week,
Cool.
and some of them started it as a blog. Or as a
Yeah.
DIY, you know, video channel
Yeah.
because they enjoyed painting furniture or whatever, and
Yeah.
then it turned into something else. So don't discredit that creative playtime even as an adult. And, for me, furniture is my playtime. I don't sell furniture. I don't, flip furniture. I never have. I've made some pieces for some friends and family. I like to restore furniture, and I live in Westchester, and there's wealthy people who throw away perfectly good pieces all the time.
Yep. Yep.
In
Yeah.
fact, most of my house is made up of these pieces, that I just find and fix. And, that's my playtime. I turn on some good tunes, and I get to play with wood filler and glue and, all kinds of stuff to
Yeah.
make these things come back to life or fix them. And so I don't care what the age is. I think more people should be spending time working with their hands.
You reminded me something of something. I saw it on like the Today Show, and I think it was New Hampshire or Vermont or Maine or something like that. But a community got together and rented a space, and people who have knowledge in their area go there, and other people bring stuff that's broken or needs repair, and they
Mhm.
all help each other. They all teach each other the skills that
The
they
skills.
have. And I think that's an amazing idea. So if you do not have anything in your area, I don't think that would be a tough row to hoe if you really wanted a place where not only could you save a lot of money, but you could learn some
Mhm.
great skills, and your children could be exposed to that type of community of help, because that's really how it used to be in the olden days when we were primarily an agricultural nation.
Yes,
The farmers helped farmers. They built barns together. They did all kinds of things to support each other.
exactly.
And losing the knowledge of the skill, if it's not passed on, that's why when apprenticeships disappeared, I knew it was like the beginning of the end. Because who is going to teach who? Do we have to start like completely all over again and learn those skills? So if you can share your knowledge with especially a younger generation, wow, what a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where can people find you, Carol? Here on LinkedIn. We're
I
also
am,
live on
yeah,
Facebook,
I
and
have a
we're also
metalwork.
live on YouTube.
I'm around. So like, I don't know if, do you want me like to give out, I don't mind giving out an address or anything. Is
Yeah,
that
you
okay
can
with
give out
you?
an email address, your website. Where can
All
people
right.
find you if people wanna
Yeah.
send their kids to your summer camp?
Oh,
Like,
way cool.
where
So,
do they find Carol?
so my telephone number is all over the World Wide Web, so it doesn't matter anymore. So if you really want to call me or text me, here you go. 860-394-9795. I am used to working around the clock, so you can call me, text me anytime. It doesn't bother me in the least. I have a well, my I don't check my emails so much, so texting is really the best. But the Metalwork by Carol on Facebook, or just me, Carole Del Vecchio on Facebook, you can message me, and I'd love to chat with you. And even if I can just help you in your
Mhm.
area locate something, if you're looking for a service or you're looking for something educational, I'd love to help you with that.
Yes, Carol is a wealth of knowledge and information, another super connector on this platform that I've grown to love so much. Another shout out to Jen and Jess one more time for connecting us and also
Absolutely,
for,
absolutely.
just bringing community together. Shout out to Lance, another
Oh,
supporter,
there's so
amazing.
many now,
So
isn't it great?
many. Yeah,
Great.
so many people and too many people to, even shout out. Also, shout out to Sarah who's been and here the
Yes, Sarah.
entire time. So thank you so much, Sarah, for all your contributions and for being here today. And I look forward to actually reading the comments. I thank the folks who are watching the
Yes,
replay
thank you so
because
much.
I know that sometimes people can't catch these live. And I do get amazing direct messages from folks. Carol, you've been a joy to, host this morning. I am so glad that I listened to my intuition and decided to do these Saturday episodes for the month of March. And who knows, I might do pop up episodes along the way. There are some additional incredible women who are not typically on LinkedIn coming next Saturday and the Friday following. So I'm really excited to bring on a carpenter, a remodeler, and business owner from Germany next Saturday. And it's going to be a little bit later in the day for her. So, of course, we'll be playing with time in the morning. And the following Friday, I'm also going to bring a union electrician and really excited about her as well. And, I will, of course, continue to highlight both amazing, incredible women and men that are doing things in the construction industry from education, like yourself, to, project management, like Matt last week, and
Okay.
consultants like Jesse and all of the others, that are really just making waves in the industry. It's not just about picking up a hammer or a tool anymore. There's so many different roles in the construction industry. And you and I have talked today about so many pathways to construction for both young men and women. And I'm just so grateful for you and your time.
Well, you got to realize what a powerful example that you are as well. And the fact that you take time to do this, you allow us to have voices to share all this important information. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thank you so much. And with that, that's an amazing segue to let the folks know a reminder always make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. And of course, not just this episode, but past episodes. If it resonates with you, if you think that there is a parent or a friend or somebody that needs to see this or hear little snippets of this, send it to them. Bookmark the, timestamp of where they need to start if you don't think they're going to listen to the whole thing. Because I know we could talk forever
We could.
about all of this, and this day and age, people have a very short attention span, but definitely share this with the people because ultimately, the more folks that see this, the more people we can impact. And, this skills gap, it's all in our head. It really is.
It is.
We have the power as a
Yes, we
community
do.
and just as a society to change this. So thank you again, Carole, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Catch
Thank
you
you.
next time.
Great.